Welcome to the next segment in the Contact Manager project. In the previous segment, the address class, you were to complete your own address class, filling in each of the methods for which there was a java.doc comment. So in our next step, we're going to actually go ahead and evaluate your work. We're going to do that using a jar file that contains a test suite that will call each of your methods, compare your results with expected test results, and let you know how you did. To do that, we're going to need to bring an address test.jar file into your project. To do that, you're going to have to start by downloading it. And you may very well get a warning asking you, are you sure that you want to download this file, because it could harm your computer. You'll have to trust me that I haven't put anything nasty in that jar file. Go ahead and download it. And then you're also going to need the test runner file. So go ahead and download that file as well. Once you have those two files downloaded, you're going to need to switch to Eclipse. And now we're going to add these to your project. So at this point, you can go back to your file mechanism, open a new window, navigate to where you downloaded those files, and then we're going to add them to our Eclipse project. If you're using a system other than Eclipse, there should be a similar mechanism. So let's start by adding the address jar file to our Contact Manager project. We're just going to simply drag and drop it onto the Contact Manager project icon here, or entry at the top of the Package Explorer. And then when it prompts us, we're going to say we want to copy the files into the project. We don't want to link the file. And then you'll notice that you have address test.jar listed now below your source folder and your JRE system library. Okay, so next step is to make sure that this file is part of your build path, which means that your project will be able to find it and use it. So you're going to right click on it, go down to where it says build path, go down to add to build path, at which point you'll have a new entry, referenced libraries, and in that you'll have address test.jar. For our next step, we're going to go back to our file navigator on the Mac. It's referred to as the Finder. On Windows, it would be your Explorer. And then we're going to find our address test runner.java, and we're going to drag that. This one we're going to put in our default package. Drop it in our default package, click OK, and here we go. All right, so what is in the address test runner? Well, of course, you could also add this in manually by going to the website. Let's just quickly look at it. It's a very complex program. Look at that. It's about 5 lines of code. All it does is it starts the test suite by calling the score method in the address test class. So let's go back. Let's open address test runner, and we can see here the same code. So what happens when we run it? Well, we're going to simply get an analysis of our address class. So on this is the date of this particular version of the test suite. It starts by calling the default constructor and the getters, and doing that generated a Java language error. So it says no submission allowed. Well, I guess that means I didn't do a very good job writing my default constructor. So I better go back to my class, scroll down, and see what's in my default constructor. Uh-oh, it turns out I didn't write a default constructor. So I'm going to uncomment the default constructor line here, and then I realized that one of the things that my default constructor was supposed to do was to initialize street, city, state, and zip code. So I'm going to go ahead and have it initialize street, but at that point I realized I don't have a street instance variable, so I'm going to create a private string called street, and then I'm going to go ahead and give that a value, and it should be empty. Okay, so now I have a default constructor and it initializes street. So I'm going to rerun my test suite, and I still got a Java language error. Notice it says it's testing the default constructor and getter methods. Well, did I write a getter method for anything? Well, if I scroll down here to getter methods, I didn't write a getter method. So, because I'm not going to give you the answers here, we're just going to put in a getter method for the street that simply returns a null value. And let's run it and see if that changed the results of my test suite. Well, I can see that I got one test down. Street equals null, but it should be an empty string. So I got 0 out of 0.2 possible points, and then I got another Java language error. No submission allowed. Why do we think we got a Java language error here? Well, probably because the very next thing it was going to do is test the next thing, which was city. And then, of course, it's going to test state, zip, and all the other methods. Now, here's the important thing to understand about the test suite. In order for the test suite to test each of your methods, it ultimately has to call each of your getter methods in order to perform any tests. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the same bit of code here that returns null into each of my getter methods so that I actually have a getter method for each of these. And then I'm going to rerun my test suite and see how far I get. Now notice this time it was able to complete the default constructor test. And it did it, but I got 0 points for it because I didn't do it correctly. All of my values are returning null, and they should be returning empty strings. And then when it got to new address, again, trying to perform the same test, it got another Java language error. So you're going to run through each of your tests, make sure that each of your methods exist, and that it returns some kind of value, and you shouldn't see any of these Java language errors. If your code is working completely, you should get 10 out of 10 points possible. That's it. Thank you. Get to work.